I'm gonna show you how I handmade my smoked Sinners cosplay. So I started with a plain white tank top, and then I used clothing right dye to put in a boiling hot pan, and then I threw the tank top in there, and my shirt came out like a dirty brown color. And then I used red acrylic paint and a wet sponge to dampen all of the red blood areas. And I went to the thrift store and found some brown khaki trousers, and then I bought some suspensors from Amazon, and I wore regular brown dress shoes. And I purchased an old vintage square watch on Amazon. Okay, so for the shoulder gun holsters, I started off taking a piece of paper and drawing out the sketch of the holsters, and then I took that sketch and I drew it on EVA foam and I cut it out. And I used a hot tool gun to create seams on each end of my shoulder holsters to make it look like it's been sewed. And here I'm cutting out the connector piece that connects all these straps together. And for the gun holsters, I use cardboard box, and I use a pistol to kind of map out how large I wanted the holsters to be. And after I cut out the cardboard piece, I traced it on EVA foam, and then I glued the EVA foam on top of the cardboard. So now I have all my pieces laid out for my shoulder gun holster. So I wanted my shoulder gun holsters to give the effect and look just like real leather. So what I did was I took my heat gun and I heat up the shoulder straps, and I balled up a piece of aluminum while my pieces were hot, and I just dabbed the imprint of the aluminum onto the shoulder holsters to give it texture just like leather has. And I used Mod Podge as my primer, and I used black acrylic paint to paint on all of my pieces. I used brown acrylic paint to paint all of my pieces. And then I began to put everything together to create the gun holster. Now everything is starting to come together. So here I'm actually putting together the pistol holders, and then I'm gluing buckles onto the pistol holders to be attached to the actual shoulder gun holster. So I needed buckles, so I found an old backpack at a thrift store, and I cut out the buckles from the backpack, and I used these buckles to attach to my shoulder gun holster. And I plunged holes at the very tips of my shoulder holsters for the buckles to go through. And now I am attaching the gun holsters onto the straps here. And I also put detail on the back of the connector pieces of the gun holster. These cute little gold dots. And now my shoulder gun holsters are finished. I'm gonna show you how I handmade the necklaces. So for the silver medallion, I use Warbler. And I used a peel topper to cut out the shape from Warbler. And then I cut it out, and I used my hot tool gun to create the incisions on the medallion. And then I used silver paint to paint it silver. And I used brown paint to give it a little dirt texture on it. And I looped the necklace through the medallion. Now for the other necklace, I cut out a strip of craft foam. And then I hand painted it brown, and I configured it into like a weird shape using super glue, the way it looks in the movie. And then I glued it onto this other piece, and I used brown thread to wrap around, and that's kind of how I made the necklace. The medallion and the necklace turned out looking quite amazing. I love the turnout. Now, I had to relax my hair with this, so I used a cream relaxer on my hair. I used mousse, Gorilla Gel, and I used holding hairspray. So after the relaxer was finished, my hair was straight, and then I used a brush to brush my hair backwards, and I put a part in my head. And then I used my holding hairspray to hold everything in place. And then I shaved my beard to look exactly like he has it in the movie. So once everything was finished and put together, I put on the costume and I became Smoke from Sinners. This costume was so amazing to make, and I felt so empowered to be this character. Thank you for watching.